Okay, so how do I make a character unique? Well, the wonderful thing is that you've been given a gift, and that is you. And if you use all of your own personal emotions and reactions and experience, guess what? Your character will be unique because you're unique. And I mean, obviously, we all have similar emotional reactions to certain stimuli and to certain situations, but you also have a uniquely personal take on that experience. And that, if you can access that, if you can access the deep well of your own emotional truth, then guess what? All of your characters will have that incredibly unique take on their archetypal selves. So that is going to be extremely important. The nice thing is that hopefully as an actor or someone who is involved and interested in character acting, you have that access to your own emotional life, and if you use that, you'll stay in good stead. So hopefully that's something that you can all access.
Absolutely, and the more specific you are, the more believable it gets.
Mhm.
So and less generic. So excellent explanation. All right, use the building blocks of sound. I call these the building blocks of sound. These are based off of 5 building blocks of sound that I actually learned about from Roger Love when he describes ways in which you can express tone and sound, and mostly which he uses for singing training. I expanded upon them a little bit as it applies to voiceover, so we're just going to go over these really quickly because these are all really important tools that you can use to enhance your all types of voiceover, different elements to think about, but especially important in character work because this just really can give your characters the variety that you need to make them interesting and compelling. So here we go. Oh, and also, of course, to express, the specific emotion of the character, but the physicality of the character. All of these things can help create that 3-dimensional picture and breathe life into it. So, first and foremost, pitch. Obviously, if you're talking a very high pitch, this has a very specific feeling to it. Versus if you're talking a very low pitch, then that would, of course, be very different. Kids' voices obviously tend to be in the higher pitch, and so you can use pitch to portray age. But of course, you can use pitch to portray any number of things. It could even be, nervous, a nervous quality, any of the above, screaming and whatnot. All of those are pitch variations. So use pitch in your reads, and vary the pitch, which will give your reads contrast, which will again create a deeper dimension to the character. So that's pitch. Did you have anything to add for that, David?
No, I love your pitch.
But okay, volume. Obviously, a very quiet character will sound very different from a very loud character. Very different effects there. One denoting power and one perhaps denoting um, a more timid feeling to it. And again, using that to portray your character's emotions is really powerful, whether they're feeling confident, or they're feeling very shy, perhaps, or just their overall personality type. Maybe someone's just a really, really loud person. Maybe you're portraying, like a soccer coach or something, or some kind of a coach. Most of them are usually characterized by a lot of yelling and shouting. So anyway, you can use that to add dimension to your characters as well. A very powerful tool. Speed. Characters that talk really fast tend to be, maybe kind of quirky, or they used to be really, actually, you can use this for anything, really. Up to you how you use speed. But a very fast character versus a very slow character, again, very different portrayals. So you might use a slower speed to a more relaxed tone where they're not going anywhere. Everything is calm and a slower pace. Why don't you just calm down there? So that has a very different feeling to it, a laid back feeling, whereas something very high speed might denote something that's someone who's just really, really hyper or in a rush all the time, or maybe their brain is just spinning really quickly. All of these things add a lot of personality. And varying speed within your read, of course, as I mentioned before, gives that character the emotional contrast in their, the different states that they're in that you're going to be portraying. So gives a lot of depth to the character.
Indeed.
Indeed. Tone is can be a confusing concept. I think the best way is just kind of to demonstrate it. I think one of the easiest ways to understand tone is just, there's very clear bell-like tones that people have in particular voices. I have a very clear tone to my voice. Fran Drescher has a nasal tone. So that's a really one of the most distinctive tones. And again, that has to do with the resonance that's going on in your resonance chamber in the pharyngeal cavity, the anatomy of your bone structure, the way you're placing the sound, where the breath is coming out, how the phonation is coming out. All of that is affected by anatomy and the way that you actually, the physical way you are creating phonation. So, and there's ways to create different tones. So, a lot of times people will call this placement in voiceover. And again, that's just another way of saying, a similar thing, where you put the sound, whether it's kind of in the back of your throat, which David did earlier. I don't know if you could demonstrate that again, David.
Sure. Well, I mean, you understand that it's still coming from my diaphragm, but, well, I mean, it's stuck there in the back of my throat. I can feel it, the muscles there, and then, I can go higher, and I can go higher, and I can go higher, and it's still in the back of my throat. Okay, stop it.
Fantastic. So again, there's a huge range in tones. Men can even do they can do a lot in the falsetto range, which women don't have as much access to, and they can get really cartoony and some stuff. You can probably do some of that too.
I just wanted to know why that was. Why can't you do that? Why can't women do what we can do?
So tone is a very powerful element to sound. Have some fun with it, play with it, play with the anatomy of your mouth. If you shrink shrink the space in your mouth, if you're shutting down your jaw versus opening your mouth really wide, opening the back space, lifting the soft palate, all of that's going to create different tonal qualities. So definitely some fun stuff to play with. Rhythm. And I think, David, you mentioned this is also called cadence in some places.
It is.
We're all familiar with iambic pentameter, Shakespeare, da-dun, 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 da-dun. All voiceover has a rhythm and a patterning to it. We all speak in different rhythms. And the main thing is most of us do not tend to speak with a consistent rhythm. Sometimes we'll go really fast. Sometimes we'll go kind of slower. Some speech patterns do tend to have a consistent rhythm. This is really apparent, especially for particular types of accents. For example, the French people always have this kind of da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da kind of rhythm to it. Italian speech. Go ahead.
So if you ask them, they will say, you are an American bastard for saying these things. They will not like this at all, so you better be careful what you say.
Exactly. So, but yeah, accents, dialect are one of the best ways to hear examples of that. And that is because each language has its own its own rhythm to it, like in the natural native language. And so, Italians have their own way of speaking, which tends to be very fluid. And the
Germans, they have a very, very strict kind of way of talking where it's much more staccato, if you understand. No, there's a very different rhythm there. Don't you understand?
I can't do German to save my life, so that's awesome. So absolutely, that's one of the best places to see it. But of course, you can add rhythm to your characters to create a cool effect. So say you have a character where he's kind of always going on, oh wow, this is awesome. You can use that to create dimension to your characters. So play with rhythms, and you can come up with some really, really interesting stuff.
Time to go on to melody.
Melody! So, melody is really important. There is a reason why there are so many voice actors that are musicians or singers. All voiceover is it's speaking and sort of singing and speaking at the same time. We create a beautiful sound. And so varying your melody can add just so much life to your reads. And that goes for commercial and narration as well. Changing the melody in anything that you are doing voiceover for can add a lot of contrast and kind of wake people up and keep things bright and interesting. If you have a bright, happy melody to something, come on, let's play a game. That was very da 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 da. Or come on, let's play a game. Da 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 da. I mean, all of that has a melody. So, whereas a monotone character, where everything they do has only one pitch, one note to everything, that in and of itself is a character. So be conscious of your melody, play with it, make sure that it reflects the character in a way that's realistic and fun and adds a little, meat and spice to it, if you will. Anything you wanted to add for that, David?
No, but I do want to talk about breath support.
You do it. Do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, breath support is actually none of these things that we've been talking about, that Cristina has been talking about, can happen without breath. I mean, and that's the most exciting thing in a way, because it's wonderful because we do breathe. But so
I love breathing.
I love breathing. People don't usually breathe well in their normal day-to-day life. They usually breathe very shallowly, and as a result, don't have the breath support and breath capacity that they should have as an acting, as a character actor. I believe you have, Cristina, a webinar directly relating to this particular aspect of the building blocks of sound, yeah?
I do. We have a previous webinar that's called Vocal Health for Voice Actors. Do check it out if you're interested in learning more details about the specific anatomy and physiology of, in terms of vocal technique and the vocal structures, the vocal cords, the pharyngeal cavity, where the larynx is, where the epiglottis is. All of this good stuff is in that presentation, as well as some tips on vocal health and breathing and how you can maintain a healthy apparatus for creating sound. So.
Oh my God, we are helping you in so many different ways. This is silly. This is just getting silly. Anyway, but the aspect of breath support is so important, because the way you're going to get better at breath support is by doing breathing exercises, by working the muscles in your chest, your stomach, your diaphragm, and having more control over that. The more control you have over your breath capacity, the better your breath support will be, the better your resonance will be, the longer you will be able to talk in one breath. All sorts of wonderful things happen when you have great breath support.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's going to help you in every area of voiceover. It's going to help you manage a 30-second spot, a 10-second, a really fast 10-second tag. And again, it's going to give you a lot of tools for creating more power and resonance in your character work, in any type of work. And you can also start to play with it for effects. So, someone that has a lot of diaphragmatic support has a totally different sound. Versus if you wanted to, sound like someone who's like, you can actually create a sound of being out of breath for an effect. So, oh my gosh, this is so hard. I can't. And I literally have no breath when I'm making that sound, but it creates a certain tension, which I want for that character. I don't recommend doing that for an entire session, but you can use it to add a little, again, spice to your reads and realism. So, cool. Moving on. Archetypes, all you, buddy.
All right. Well, archetypes are one of my favorite things to talk about, because all characters arise from archetype. Archetypes are great. They've been around for as long as the human species has been around. There will always be various types of people, no matter what century, no matter what time, no matter what culture. There will always be certain types of people, and we relate to these as human beings. And surprise, surprise, so many characters involved in video games and animation are all about those incredible archetypes and how we deal with them and how we work that out as human beings. So your job is to really kind of swim around in that wonderful lake of archetypal characters and find things that resonate with you. I mean, the first step towards creating a real character is not is to find things that are close enough to your own experience that you can kind of revel in them, that you can bring what we talked about before, which is your own personal experience to a lot of this, and that we don't end up, the important thing is that we don't end up with stereotype, which is very different from archetype.
Absolutely.
A stereotype is taking all the most blatant aspects of an archetype and simply working with those because they're the easiest, because they are true, but they're also very extremely pronounced aspects of that particular archetype. And, when people started doing that, that was fine. So, but the problem is that that's not fine anymore. People won't accept stereotypes for animation, and they will accept archetypes, however. And the only way that you can not make a stereotype is using your personal take on this particular archetype, delving a little deeper, giving it something a little odd or strange or different, so that you're creating maybe someday a new stereotype, but you will have started it.
Yeah.
And that, yeah. So I mean, that's this wonderful thing about archetypes is really being able to use your own access of your personal experience, and then also being a good observer, being able to observe other people and their experiences and the way they react to archetypes, and if they are an archetype, how they're reacting, because it's not going to be exactly the same. And that's where you get into the nuance of archetype, and that's where your character can shine.
Absolutely. Cool. Well said.
All right.
And obviously, all of these we've just put a few samples here. Snob,
Nope,
villain.
nope. These are the only archetypes there are.
This is
There
it.
are. This is it. If you so forget it. If you can't do these, forget doing character. Find another job.
These are just a tiny smattering, a tiny smattering. That's not a word. I don't. Maybe it is. Of
It is,
archetypes. There are so
but it is.
many out there, so many good ones. These are just a few of the common ones you see. And again, within these, there is just a huge range. You might have a ditzy snob. You might have a true, like an educated snob. Huge ranges, of course, in villain and in villainesses. Heroes and heroines as well. You've really kick butt heroes and heroines. You have really hardcore heroes and heroines and video
You have
games. I'm sorry?
you have reticent heroes and heroines.
Right, absolutely. You have all versions of unfocused or angry teens, which can range anything from like kind of the stoner like surfer thing to just really angsty girl teen with lots of attitude. Obviously, a huge range in kids' voices. An old man, old lady that can be angry, that can be sweet, that can be kind of scatterbrained. Again, there's just huge ranges in here. So your job is to find how do you make that unique and interesting and unlike anybody else out there. So
I just wish there were more archetypes than these.
no, this is it.
Anyway, okay, go ahead.
So what do different emotional states sound like? I love asking people this because people are like, I don't know. I think a lot of people have absolutely no idea how they truly sound when they're in a particular emotional state. I mean, we know how we can imagine how we sound, but do we really know how? I mean, do you know exactly how you sound when you're absolutely outraged, when you're extremely nervous, when you're feeling a little bit insecure, when you're on a date and you're stumbling over your words, you just kind of maybe just having a hard time speaking about anything? Do you know what you sound like when you're about to cry? Like really and truly. Maybe is it more than just a slight breaking in your voice or a lump in your throat? Maybe, some of these emotions are not very pretty. Some of them they're ugly sounding, but that makes them real and that makes them powerful and authentic. And that's what you have got to set out and know about yourself, because you want to be able to call that up at a moment's notice and have it be real.
And just as important is that while you're hearing this, is that you're witnessing the physical changes going through your body. Because you're going to have, because the root of this is the root of all sound is in your body.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why it's so important to also understand that it's not just the sound, but the physicality that animates that sound.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, if you're just about to cry, there's a tension in your body, that your face maybe screws up a little bit. You're aware that you're catching your breath. All sorts of different things. Um, it's interesting. It's a hard thing to do, especially when you're in a kind of a dark space. But I've always told my students, at that moment where you're really experiencing life in a very intense way, at the same time that it's really, really hard and maybe scary or sad, um, there should be a little part of you observing all this in the background, going, someday I'm going to use this in a character.
Ah, yes.
Yeah,
It's
that's the actor for you.
it's good. It's good for you. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, absolutely. So, and that's why I say be a good listener and observer, and that's first and foremost of yourself. Check yourself out. What do you do? Know that inside out. And then step two is start to look and observe and watch other people. Whoa, sorry about that. In great detail, because that is going to give you just extra fuel, extra information that you can add. Because maybe you talk really fast when you're nervous, but maybe someone else doesn't. Maybe they stutter instead. But learn all the tools for different emotional expression from as many people as you can, because that just gives you extra stuff to work with. So, um,
Cool.
so that's that.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah.
Here's yeah, totally. So emotional physical states to try. This is an exercise I give many of my students. Do you want to talk about this?
Only in that it's really important to all of these things that are here. If you take a look at all these things, they're all things that we've done at one point or another in our lives, and it's one thing to actually do them in the moment. It's another thing to recreate them in as genuine a way as possible. Again, that this is moving back to exactly what we were talking about before, observing yourself. Am I doing this in a genuine way? Can I manufacture this? A lot of people, they say, oh, I can never cry, on cue. I always am jealous of the people that do. But that's because I think it takes uh, a special kind of a willingness to be so uncomfortable in that moment that you bring up a very uncomfortable moment in your life or a very uncomfortable thought that can generate that. Once you're there, your body takes over. It goes like, oh my God, I know this exactly thing, I know it. And you just kind of work with that once you're there. But there's a lot of stuff that won't be as hard, like being sexy and alluring.
That's hard for a lot of people, actually.
No, I'm joking.
Oh,
It's
no,
not hard. That's just not hard for me.
no. So,
So,
oh, I see. I see.
okay. Anyway,
Well, okay. Anyway, not everybody looks as good as you, David, at your age. I have to tell you. I'm not
thank you.
not gonna lie. David looks amazing for
Thank you.
I don't want to look just
For,
like you, but I want to age
for an old,
like you.
yeah, yeah. I'm okay for an old dude. So,
You're not. You're not old.
yeah.
So
Anyway,
so anyway, the point of this is, these are just a few ideas of emotions to record yourself doing. Get an accurate recording of yourself and find out what you actually sound like. Know the difference between how you sound and how other people sound when they're agitated versus irritated, insecure versus extremely nervous. How are those different? Those are the ones where it's like, okay, it's a subtle difference, but how do you portray that emotionally in your voiceover? That's really, really important. I also find that people have a hard time with efforted or out of breath. People have a hard time making that sound like they really are running or some, one of the above. If you have to record yourself running and telling a story, do it, because it will help. So
no, the best thing you can do is actually go run around your house and a number of times, and then come back and just feel what that is to kind of slightly be out of breath,
hmm
and what it ends up being physically is that you're gonna it's almost like you little lightheaded. So you've got to create that. It's not always a fun state to be in, to be out of breath, frankly.
hmm
But yeah, it's a
Yep.
slightly out of breath thing that you got to create. So anyway,
Yeah.
sorry. Go
Anyway,
ahead.
so there's lots of ways to experiment with those, but get them done. They will be useful, especially in things like video games, animation, where strong acting skills are required. So
I just wish there were more emotional and physical states than the
no,
ones we provide.
that's
But that's
all.
it. That's the only ones
That's
there are.
all
Okay.
there is.
Moving on.
Such a punk.
Well,
Um,
it's just, voice acting is so damn limited.
this is
They
a
give you
comprehensive webinar. We've talked about everything here. This is all you need to know ever.
yeah.
This is literally just scratching the surface, which is why we are more than happy to share this with you guys, because this gives everybody the tools to know. I think this is one of the things where now you know how much you need to know, how much you don't know. There's so much. And again, I'm learning every day with character. There's always more to learn, and expand upon, and more exercises. So, these are just some beginning tools to get you started and maybe give you some direction for, how you want to approach your character work, maybe what genres you want to go on, what your strengths are going to be, what you need to improve, and maybe what kind of coaching or classes might be best for you, or maybe character isn't for you. All of this will give you that information. So, okay, script analysis. Take it away. Or is this me?
Take it away.
Take it away.
Oh, I'm fine with that. So obviously now, if you got all this information swimming around your head, you're now going to pick up a script, and you're going to have to animate the character that's in that script. And one of the best places to start is, why am I talking at this moment?
Yeah.
Why am I opening up my mouth and saying anything? And there's always a reason, but I need to find what that is. And usually there will be some kind of context. With any luck in an audition, you will be given context for the lines that you have to audition. But every once in a while that's not true, and you're going to still have to decide on a motivation. Some of that becomes intuitive based on what they're saying and the way in which a line is written. But you're going to have to make those decisions no matter what. And every once in a while, when they don't give you that kind of contextual information, you're going to make a decision that's maybe wrong. It's maybe not what that script is asking for at that moment. However, you don't know exactly what they wanted in that moment. I've had those moments before where I've just had to make a decision. And the most important thing that you can do in that moment is make a really dedicated, committed, strong decision about what your motivation is. So if it's wrong, they will still be bowled over by the actual intent of the motivation.
Yep.
I have gotten roles, I have gotten parts in video games not because I've made the right decision, but because I made the wrong decision in a incredibly committed way. And they'll say, "Wow, that was fantastic, Dave. We can't use any of it, but you did that so well that we figured you could do this." And indeed.
Yep.
So that's what. Yeah.
Yeah, no, sorry. And at worst, maybe they're like, that wasn't what we were thinking, but that was great, and maybe we even consider doing it that way. And Brian Sommer is one of the, I can't remember who he studied with, but I think their famous quote is, you have to, if you're going to pick a way to go, you can't drive in the middle of the road. You have to pick one side. So pick one, and stick with it. And that's going to speak volumes about, you as an actor and your experience. If you're kind of wishy-washy and somewhere in the middle, it's just going to sound like you don't know what you're doing. So, deciding your motivations. And when I say motivations, I mean, literally when I go through a script for the first time and I really want to do my homework and make it amazing, or, as amazing as I can, I go through every single phrase and I decide, okay, how am I feeling at this moment? Am I excited? Am I nervous? Am I really trying to get him or whoever it is to do something else? I will, every single thing I will write down my underlying emotion for, and I make a decision, and then I try out the phrase a number of ways so that I portray that motivation with the speech, because sometimes the speech doesn't reflect your motivation. This is what they call the subtext and whatnot. These are important concepts to examine, especially for things like villains, where maybe they're saying one thing and they mean something completely different, because they think they're doing the right thing. There are complex characters where all of those little subtleties make a huge difference. So if you have a script and you're not sure, how to just, you want to know how to work through it, go through every sentence and make yourself assign a feeling or motivation to it, and you will find that your work is much more well developed. So cool.
Cool.
Oh, that's the end. Da, 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 da. Essentials of Character Voice Acting, presented by.
See, did you see that? Melody, tone, rhythm, all those things. They were there at that very important moment, the end of our webinar.
Oh, thank you guys so much for coming and joining us. Obviously, David and I could talk about character all day, just to give you guys a couple of ideas about things that we have coming up. If you
Yeah, why not do more than just talk about it? Why don't you join a class? As a matter of fact, one's coming up in November called Building Character, and it's a fantastic class. It's only it's only got a couple of more spaces at this point, and we want you to be there. Right?
No, right. Well, and again, obviously, we do free educational webinars. We want to help the community, but of course, we do obviously teach as well. So, if this is something that's of interest to you and you want to work on it, if you like our style and if it appeals to you, we do small group classes. Everything is done remotely, and you can participate from anywhere. Classes maxed out at about 7 or 8 people at the most. Usually, they're more like 6 or 7. David's class is coming up in November. Starts at the beginning of November, goes for 4 weeks, 2 hours a week, and it's called Building Characters. And in that class, he works on archetypes. So if you are working towards or thinking about doing a demo and you have a lot of characters, but you really need to polish them up, or you're just getting started and you need to start to find your core archetypes, this is a fabulous class for anybody. So check that out. He really examines how to create unique characters, working towards the demo, and you will be working with real gaming and cartoon scripts with a strategized method. So that's Building Character. I am teaching.
Then you have a class.
I do. I have a class. I'm really excited about this. I've never taught this class before. I just finished putting the curriculum together. I teach. This is for ladies only. So sorry, guys. This is specifically for youthful voiced ladies, for ladies who sound like me. Who can do kids' voices, who can do that kind of youthful teen, upbeat, smiley kids educational thing. Toys, games, and mobile game apps class. This is an advanced class. You do need instructor approval in order to participate, but we will be practicing voiceover technique for performing realistic kids' voices, not cartoony kids' voices. Niche exploration, we will be doing in-depth script analysis for toys and games, as well as mobile game apps. And we will also be doing branding and marketing for the youthful voiced vocal type with Anganguza. So I'm really excited about that. That's going to be really fun, so I'm pumped. And last but not least, I am teaching at Voice One in November 1st, and that is also toys and games. So I will be there from 10 to 5 p.m. in person in San Francisco if you're up in that area. So that's a fun class too. Oh, and last but not least, David and I are going to VO Atlanta. Da, 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 da! Woo! David is the director of VO Atlanta. And
Not the youth day, not
yes.
the rector.
Oh, no, sorry. The director of Youth Day at VO Atlanta. I will be his assistant, his humble assistant, and I will be getting his pens and notepads, and it's going to be awesome. No, I'm super excited.
I'm going to saw Cristina in half. And then, because she's my assistant and she does these things, she gets into a box. We saw her in half, and we put her together again.
And I'll wear a red sequin dress, and it'll be fabulous.
Yes, you better.
No, I mean, this is literally because, Jesus, this is literally because I think David and I are possibly two of the silliest people ever. We absolutely love to coach. If you have kids who are into voiceover and you happen to be going to VO Atlanta, check it out. We're going to be having a blast, and if you're at VO Atlanta, do say hi, because we'll be there. So anyway, thank you guys so much for joining us. That is it. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us either one of us at any time. David's email is david.gvaa@gmail.com. I am Cristina at globalvoiceacademy.com. Our website is globalvoiceacademy.com. And if you want to see some more educational lectures for free, you can check out our GVAA YouTube channel, which you are probably watching right now. We put out a free educational webinar every few months, and they're full, half-hour to full-hour lectures. So I hope you've enjoyed this today. We've had a blast. Thank you for joining us, and happy voiceovering.
Thank you. Take care. Have a good one, guys. Bye.
Bye.